The PlayStation 3 era might have been the best generation in PlayStation history. So many legendary games came out during that time. And what's crazy is that a lot of them are still incredibly fun to play, even today. So in this video, we're going back and looking at some of the best PS3 era games that still hold up. If you're ready, let's get started. Arkham City took everything great about Arkham Asylum and made it bigger, darker, and way more ambitious. Instead of being trapped in one asylum, you're thrown into a massive prison city right in the middle of Gotham, and for the first time you truly feel like Batman. Gliding across rooftops, diving into crime scenes, disappearing into the shadows, it's all insanely immersive. The free-flow combat system still feels amazing even today. Once you build momentum, fights start looking like a choreographed action movie. Gadgets flow naturally into combat, aerial takedowns feel smooth, and chaining attacks together becomes ridiculously satisfying, and the boss lineup is stacked. Honestly, this is still one of the best superhero games ever made.
This is gonna hurt.
Yeah, you're running safe up there.
Red clicks to the AO!
Agent! ETA!
Killzone 2. When Killzone 2 launched, people genuinely couldn't believe the PS3 could run something that looked this good. The atmosphere on Helgon is brutal. Everything feels heavy, dirty, and oppressive. You're part of a special forces squad infiltrating enemy territory, and the game constantly throws you into intense warzone scenarios. But what really makes the gameplay stand out is the weight of the combat. Weapons don't feel light or arcade-like. Every reload, every shot, every movement feels deliberate. You actually have to think about positioning instead of just sprinting forward mindlessly. And the multiplayer, it was one of the most underrated FPS experiences of that generation. Different classes, tactical gameplay, huge battles. It rewarded smart players instead of just fast reflexes. If you missed this during the PS3 days, you seriously need to experience it. Ellis Madness Returns. Nobody has ever turned Wonderland into something this disturbing before. Ellis Madness Returns takes the classic fairy tale world and transforms it into a twisted psychological nightmare. Alice is struggling with trauma and mental collapse, and every area of Wonderland reflects a different piece of her broken mind. Gameplay mixes platforming with fast-paced combat, and your weapons are just as creative as the world itself. You've got the Vorpal Blade for close combat, the Pepper Grinder as a machine gun, and the Hobby Horse for massive heavy attacks. Every level has its own visual identity too. One moment you're in a creepy dollhouse world, the next you're surrounded by gothic castles or surreal Japanese-inspired environments. Yeah, the graphics definitely show their age now, but artistically this game still looks incredible. It feels like stepping into a dark fantasy painting. Ratchet and Clank Future, Tools of Destruction. This game is pure fun from start to finish. Tools of Destruction might honestly be one of the most entertaining platformers on the PS3. The humor still lands, the pacing never slows down, and the weapon variety is absolutely ridiculous in the best way possible. You've got weapons like the Groovatron that literally forces enemies to dance, tornado launchers that throw everything into chaos, and auto-targeting rocket launchers that make combat feel explosive and satisfying. The coolest part is that every weapon levels up the more you use it, so your arsenal constantly evolves throughout the game. The planets are colorful, creative, and packed with platforming sections that keep things fresh. Even visually, this game still looks surprisingly good today because of its art style and animation quality. If you've never played a Ratchet and Clank game before, this is honestly a fantastic place to start. Grid. The original Grid nailed something that most racing games struggle with, balancing realism and accessibility. The cars feel weighty and believable, but the controls are smooth enough that almost anyone can jump in and have fun immediately. What made the game stand out was its team system. Your teammate actually mattered during races, and managing your career added another layer beyond just driving fast. The damage system was also insanely impressive for its time. Crashes looked brutal, and you could literally destroy your car if you pushed too hard. The track variety helped a lot too. One race you're speeding through Le Mans, the next you're drifting through tight Japanese streets. Every event feels different, and the driving itself is still incredibly satisfying today. Honestly, Grid is one of those racing games that aged way better than people give it credit for.
Right. What the hell kind of name is Soap, eh? How'd a muppet like you pass selection?
Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. This was the game that completely changed Call of Duty forever. When Modern Warfare dropped in 2007, it didn't just become popular, it basically took over gaming. The campaign is short, but every mission feels memorable. The ill-gillied-up sniper mission alone is still legendary. And that nuclear explosion scene, people were genuinely shocked the first time they played it. But let's be honest, the multiplayer is where this game became unstoppable. XP progression, prestige mode, weapon attachments, this game created the formula that almost every FPS copied for the next decade. And somehow, the guns still feel amazing to use even today. Every kill feels clean and satisfying. If you ever wondered why older gamers talk about the golden age of Call of Duty, this is the game they mean. Infamous. Before superhero games became everywhere, Infamous gave players something really special. You play as Cole McGrath, an ordinary guy who suddenly gains insane electric powers after a massive explosion destroys part of Empire City. And from there, the game lets you decide what kind of person you want to become. The coolest part is that your choices actually matter. If you play like a hero, Cole's powers evolve differently. If you go full villain and start causing chaos, your abilities become darker and way more destructive, grinding across power lines, launching lightning bolts at enemies, throwing cars around with electricity. The movement and combat still feel surprisingly fun. Empire City might not be the biggest open world today, but it has personality. The atmosphere feels gritty and dangerous, and honestly, the gameplay loop is still addictive. Before playing Infamous 2, you really should experience this first game because it sets up the entire story perfectly. It's honestly crazy that the PS3 could even run GTA 5. Looking back now, it still feels like some kind of technical miracle. Rockstar created a version of Los Santos that felt alive in ways most open-world games still struggle to match today. Switching between Michael, Franklin, and Trevor was genius because each character brought a completely different energy to the story. Michael's trying to survive his broken family life. Franklin wants something bigger out of life. And Trevor is just complete chaos every second he's on screen. The heists are still some of the best missions Rockstar has ever made because they combine planning, action, and unpredictability all at once. And even though people mostly talk about GTA Online these days, the single-player campaign is still incredible. The PS3 graphics obviously look older now, but gameplay-wise, this game is still ridiculously fun. Demon's Souls. And honestly, this game changed gaming forever. Back when most games were trying to hold your hand, Demon's Souls basically looked at players and said, "Good luck." There's no giant map telling you where to go. No easy mode. No mercy. Every enemy can kill you if you get careless, and every boss feels like a puzzle you have to truly understand before beating. But that's exactly what makes the game so satisfying. Every victory feels earned. The atmosphere of Boletaria is still incredible too. It feels lonely, cursed, and mysterious in a way very few games can replicate. The PS5 remake looks beautiful, but there's something about the original PS3 version that feels darker and more unsettling. If you want to see where the entire Souls genre really began, this is the game. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Uncharted 2 was the moment people realized video games could feel like blockbuster movies without sacrificing gameplay. From the very first train sequence, the game grabs your attention and never lets go. Nathan Drake is such a fun character because he actually feels human. He jokes around, messes up constantly, panics during dangerous situations, and that personality makes every adventure more memorable. One minute you're climbing collapsing buildings, the next you're escaping helicopters or sneaking through snowy villages in Tibet. Climbing, shooting, platforming, taking cover, everything feels smooth and cinematic without becoming repetitive. And visually, this game was absolutely insane for the PS3 era. Naughty Dog was operating on another level here. Honestly, if you owned a PS3 and never played Uncharted 2, you missed one of the defining games of that entire generation. Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots. Metal Gear Solid 4 doesn't feel like a normal sequel, it feels like the end of an era. You're playing as an aging Solid Snake on one final mission, and the game constantly reminds you just how heavy that journey really is. Every battlefield throws something different at you. One moment you're sneaking through active war zones while two armies fight around you, and the next you're blending into the environment with the Octo Camo system, trying not to be seen at all. What makes MGS4 special is the freedom. You can go loud if you want, but the game always rewards smart positioning and stealth more. And honestly, few games from the PS3 era felt this cinematic. Yeah, the cutscenes are insanely long, but for Metal Gear fans, that's part of the magic. This game never left the PS3 either, which somehow makes it feel even more legendary today. If you missed it back then, you missed one of PlayStation's biggest exclusives ever. The Elder Scrolls 4: Oblivion. Before Skyrim took over the internet, there was Oblivion, and back then this game felt absolutely massive. Stepping into Cyrodiil for the first time, exploring giant cities, forests, dungeons, and those terrifying Oblivion gates genuinely felt next generation on the PS3. The coolest part is how naturally your character grows. Every skill improves the more you actually use it. Swing swords enough, you get better. Sneak constantly, your stealth evolves naturally. It made role-playing feel incredibly immersive, and honestly, some of the faction questlines are still amazing today. The Dark Brotherhood alone is better than entire RPG campaigns from other games. Sure, the PS3 version has aged technically, but once you get lost in the world, you stop caring almost immediately. If you want to understand why open-world RPGs exploded in popularity, Oblivion is one of the biggest reasons why. LittleBigPlanet 2. LittleBigPlanet 2 was way more than just a cute platformer. This game basically handed players a toolbox and said, go make whatever you want, and somehow, people actually did. The platforming itself is already fun. Running around as Sackboy through handcrafted levels made out of fabric, cardboard, and random household objects gives the whole game this cozy personality that still feels unique today. But the real reason people loved this game was the creativity. The level editor was so powerful that players were making racing games, shooters, puzzle maps, and even entire game recreations inside LittleBigPlanet itself. And when you played with friends, total chaos in the best way possible. Every level became unpredictable because somebody was always messing up jumps or accidentally ruining puzzles. Few PS3 games captured pure creativity like this. Yakuza Kiwami. If you played Yakuza 0 and loved it, then Kiwami is the perfect next step. This time, the story becomes way more personal, as Kiryu gets pulled back into the criminal underworld he tried to leave behind. And once again, Kamurocho steals the show. The gameplay is what keeps you hooked though. Street fights feel heavy, aggressive, and satisfying, especially once you start mastering different combat styles. But the best part? Majima everywhere. Seriously, this man can appear literally anywhere. Around a corner, inside a store, popping out of nowhere just to fight you. Somehow it never gets old. And then there's the classic Yakuza side content. One second you're dealing with emotional crime drama, and the next you're singing karaoke or helping somebody with the weirdest side quest imaginable. That contrast is exactly why people fall in love with this series. Dead Space 2 is one of the best examples of survival horror mixed perfectly with action. Isaac Clarke isn't just surviving anymore, he's fighting back this time, and that makes the gameplay way more intense. To Procket, the combat still feels incredible even today. Every necromorph forces you to think differently because simply shooting enemies isn't enough. You have to strategically cut off limbs while managing limited ammo and resources, and when enemies start rushing you in tight hallways, panic kicks in immediately. The game constantly keeps pressure on you without ever feeling unfair, and honestly, the atmosphere is still disturbing. The sprawl station feels claustrophobic, unpredictable, and genuinely unsettling. Some scenes in this game are still shocking even by modern horror standards. Visually, it was also one of the cleanest looking PS3 games at the time. If you want a horror game that's scary and insanely fun to play, Dead Space 2 still absolutely delivers. Battlefield Bad Company 2 changed multiplayer shooters forever with one simple idea: almost everything could be destroyed. And once you experienced that, normal FPS games suddenly felt boring. Hiding behind a wall doesn't matter anymore, because tanks, rockets, and explosions can literally erase your cover from the map. That destruction system completely changed how firefights worked and made every match feel chaotic in the best way possible. The gunplay also felt amazing. Weapons had weight, recoil mattered, and teamwork actually made a difference. Rush mode especially became legendary because attacking and defending objectives felt incredibly intense. Even random teammates would naturally work together because the game's design encouraged it. And unlike a lot of shooters from that era, the campaign was actually fun too. The squad had personality, the pacing stayed entertaining, and the explosions were pure PS3 era insanity. Honestly, this is still one of the most satisfying multiplayer FPS games ever made. Resistance: Fall of Man was one of the PS3's launch titles, and looking back, it really helped define the console's identity early on. Instead of another generic World War shooter, Insomniac created an alternate history war against terrifying alien creatures called the Chimera. The weapon design is what made the gameplay stand out immediately. Every gun felt creative. The bullseye could tag enemies and curve bullets directly toward them, while weapons like the hedgehog turned entire rooms into chaos. Switching weapons constantly actually felt exciting because every tool changed how you approach combat. The atmosphere also deserves credit. The ruined version of 1950s England felt creepy, cold, and unique compared to other shooters at the time. It may not get talked about as much anymore, but this series was a huge part of the PS3 era. Fallout 3 was the moment Bethesda took this legendary RPG series into full 3D. And honestly, they absolutely nailed the atmosphere. The second you leave Vault 101 and step into the Capital Wasteland for the first time, the game hits you with this feeling of loneliness and curiosity that's still hard to replicate today. You'll randomly discover abandoned supermarkets, destroyed subway tunnels, creepy underground vaults, or tiny survivor camps hidden in the middle of nowhere. Exploring never feels pointless because the world constantly rewards your curiosity. The VATS system also made combat feel unique. Instead of pure run-and-gun shooting, you could slow everything down and strategically target enemy limbs in cinematic slow motion. Blowing off a raider's arm with a shotgun never stopped being satisfying. And then there's the atmosphere. The old-school radio music playing while wandering through a destroyed Washington, D.C. somehow makes the world feel both relaxing and depressing at the same time. Sure, Sure, the graphics are dated now, but the world building still carries this game hard. If you want to get into post-apocalyptic RPGs, Fallout 3 is still one of the best places to start. Ninja Gaiden Sigma. Ninja Gaiden Sigma is one of those games that instantly humbles you. At first, it looks like a normal hack-and-slash game, and then the game destroys you within minutes. But once the combat finally clicks, it becomes one of the most satisfying action games ever made. Playing as Ryu Hayabusa feels incredible because the combat is all about precision, timing, and reading enemy attacks perfectly. Every weapon completely changes the flow of battle too. The Dragon Sword feels fast and balanced, the Lunar Staff controls crowds beautifully, and the heavier weapons hit like absolute trucks. What really makes Sigma special is how technical the gameplay becomes. You can't just mash buttons and survive. You need to learn enemy patterns, dodge correctly, counter at the perfect moment, and use ultimate techniques strategically. The game is brutally hard, but it's fair once you understand the systems. Honestly, very few action games even today have combat this deep. If you love challenging gameplay and want something that rewards actual skill, Ninja Gaiden Sigma is mandatory. Lords of Shadow completely reinvented Castlevania, and even though longtime fans were divided on it, the game itself ended up being way better than people expected. You play as Gabriel Belmont, fighting through a dark fantasy version of Europe filled with monsters, cursed villages, giant titans, and some genuinely incredible boss fights. The Combat Cross is the star of the gameplay because it works as both a weapon and a traversal tool. One second you're whipping enemies from a distance, the next you're climbing massive structures or pulling enemies into combos. The combat definitely has some God of War energy, but it still builds its own identity through atmosphere and pacing. The world feels dark, lonely, and surprisingly beautiful at times. And honestly, some of the creature designs are still amazing today. What I really like about this game is how cinematic everything feels. Boss fights feel massive, the soundtrack is fantastic, and the adventure constantly keeps changing environments, so it never gets repetitive. It may not be the most traditional Castlevania game, but as an action-adventure game, it absolutely deserves more respect. Far Cry 3 basically created the modern Far Cry formula, and after playing it, you immediately understand why Ubisoft kept using it for years. This game was a huge deal when it came out. You start as Jason Brody, just a normal guy trapped on a tropical island full of pirates and chaos. But slowly, the game transforms you into a complete killing machine, and that progression feels incredibly satisfying. Clearing enemy outposts, hunting animals to upgrade your gear, crafting syringes, unlocking new weapons, the gameplay loop is ridiculously addictive. And of course, there's Vaz. Even people who never played the game know the definition of insanity speech. He's easily one of the most iconic villains of the PS3 era, because every scene with him feels unpredictable and intense. The island itself is also packed with things to discover. Hidden caves, radio towers, dangerous wildlife, random encounters. Exploration always feels rewarding. Visually, this game looked incredible back then too. Far Cry 3 wasn't just another open-world shooter. It became the blueprint for an entire generation of Ubisoft games.